Heyo guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Naruto Return of the Flash Season 2. Now with a new title, What If Naruto Ascendance of the Flash. Let's see what changes will come to the Naruto verse after the 3 years of training trip. Before we start, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to this channel for more what ifs, and check the description for creator of this great fanfic. So let us start. Chapter 3. I actually have little idea of what to say this time. On one hand, people are ecstatic that my story is actually quite excellent. I thank those people for their opinion. On the other hand, I'm a little put down by those people who are suggesting that putting my OC in the story was a bad idea. One or two even left the story solely because the OC put them off. We fanfiction makers thrive on the opinion of the listener. Everyone is hoping that their story will receive positive response. I have to admit, I was a little discouraged by some reviews, but nothing beyond that. I will focus on the readers that have liked my story now. I promise, I will see this story to the end, like the previous one. There are a few reasons I introduced an OC. They will come along, but the main one is I wanted to stuff out Sakura's infatuation for Sasuke. It honestly pisses me off, and is very pitiful. There was potential for redemption, which was I did it. The focus will still be Temari and Naruto, with the other pairing more on the sidelines. On the other hand, I apologize for the late update. I'm suffering from a relapse of fanfiction. You ever suddenly switch your attention and interest from one fanfiction to another? Yeah, I'm back to reading Bleach fanfiction once more. It's damn hard to focus when ideas for another fanfiction are swimming in your head. I hope you all understand. Onto the story then. Naruto and Temari lay under their blanket, with the latter on her side and idly tracing circles on Naruto's chest. Naruto was just looking up to the ceiling, lost in the stars he had decorated on the ceiling. It was something that Temari had done for him. She said she found serenity looking at the stars in the night, and hoped they brought it to him too. Naruto was moved by Temari's love for him. When they came back from Naruto's test fight, they ate the dinner that Temari had her shadow clones prepare. He was impressed that she was able to manifest 5 shadow clones with ease, and much more when he tasted her food. He ate every dish with relish, like a man eating home-cooked food after a long time, which he was. After dinner, Naruto had tried out the jacuzzi of his own home for the first time. And it was a memorable experience, only made more enjoyable by Temari joining him inside. The hot water, with jasmine soap bubbles, just worked wonders to relax his body. As they were getting out of the bath, Naruto finally couldn't hold himself in check anymore, which led them to the bedroom. They didn't go all the way though, since Temari regretfully informed him that she had to depart for Suna tomorrow, and as such needed her legs in working condition. Naruto would have been deeply upset by the news, if Temari hadn't shown how skilled she had become in using her mouth. Currently, she just lay beside him, running circles with her fingers on his chest, marveling how hard his muscles had become. When Naruto had first taken off his clothes for their bath, Temari had frozen for several moments when she saw his spectacularly improved form, much to her embarrassment. Of course, Naruto had no such shame in gawking at her body when she removed her bathrobe. Temari had filled out, in the ways only women could. She had gotten rid of almost all the baby fat she had, except for her face. It was narrower than before, but still held hints of baby fat. Her stomach had at least according to women's standards, defined six-pack. Her hips had become deliciously rounded, followed down by toned thighs. Last but not the least, her bust had wonderfully matured, becoming much more rounded with perky nipples. She was even more beautiful without her clothes. You know, I never knew you had such an impressive growth curve, Temari, Naruto commented, never taking his eyes off the stars. Temari gave a small smile at that. Maybe that's because you've never actually seen it with your own eyes. I didn't have much problem when learning Fuden ninjutsu when growing up. He finally turned his eyes to her, a fond look in his eyes. That could be one of the reasons. From your words, it seems like we both have an instinctive grasp on learning. But I like to think that you're just that badass. A haughty smirk was her response. Damn straight. But then the smirk faded and a melancholic look appeared in her eyes. Naruto. Sensing that the conversation had turned emotional, Naruto shifted until he was face to face with Temari, his lips a hair's breadth from hers. What is it, Temari? Temari gulped down her nervousness. Naruto's voice was a whisper that was only loud enough to be heard by her, and their lack of clothing wasn't helping her gather the seriousness needed for what she was about to tell him. Still, she took a deep breath and said, Naruto, while I was away training, I had a disturbing realization. Naruto frowned in concern. Tell me about it. Temari recounted all that her master had told her about Akatsuki's activity. The S-rank mercenary group, Akatsuki, they're after you, aren't they? She watched as guilt flashed across his face for a second, before being replaced by grim. Technically, they're after Kurama in my stomach but, yes, they're after me. Temari's face became pained. Then why didn't you tell me? Naruto couldn't help the wince. Her voice was filled with accusation and betrayal. Temari. I didn't want you to be worried over me. If Naruto had been wearing a shirt right now, Temari would have grabbed it, pulled him closer in frustration and slapped him. As such, in her current situation she could only beat her fist on his chest. Naruto, I'm your wife, damn it. How can I not worry over you? Naruto's expression became downcast. If I had told you about the Akatsuki, you would have been distracted from your training, Temari. It would have only bothered me if I was the reason you couldn't train properly. There's a reason why our friends don't know about them, and I'm not at liberty to tell. Naruto's words were sincere, but Temari was more hurt by the fact that he kept this from her. You have a group of S-ranked terrorists after you, and you kept this from me so I could concentrate on my training. You're more important to me than training, Naruto. Without you, her voice became softer as she tried to find words to make him understand, I wouldn't know what to do. Naruto palmed the side of her face. And you're more important to me than anything else. I want you to be happy, but I can't do that if I'm not even here, right? You were my motivation during my training, Temari. I want to be strong enough to protect both of us. And I know that you love me, there are no doubts about that. But in our world, love isn't strong enough by itself. You need to be strong as well. He paused for a moment and then chuckled. Man, I sound like an old man. Temari was suddenly tired of talking about the subject. She knew that Naruto had her best interests in mind, but sometimes she felt that Naruto relied more on logic and less on emotion. He did have social cues, but sometimes she felt that they were lacking. So what's your reason for not contacting me? Naruto's question snapped her out of her thoughts. She sighed, emotional exhaustion only increasing. Tsunade was the one who told me that no one was to contact you and Jiraiya except for her, for she was the one who assigned you missions. That was the first thing she told me when she gave me the pad. Naruto gave a thoughtful hum. Well, that's definitely a Hokage's decision. I gotta thank her for telling you that. Temari felt anger stirring in her. He was taking her talk too lightly. And why is that? The anger must have bled into her tone, for he immediately kissed her. Naruto really had some sort of magic in his kisses, for the anger suddenly disappeared. It seemed that staying angry at Naruto for too long was something that not many people could do. She melted into the kisses, their lips moving against each other in an incredibly sensual manner. It wasn't helping Temari's case as the close body contact made it hard to be angry. Naruto pulled away first, her lower lip in his grasp. He smirked in satisfaction when he heard her quiet moan of disappointment. I would have gotten distracted. Besides, you haven't seen even the half of what I'm capable of now. Temari's eyes grew wide. Have you improved that much in just 3 years? Naruto just kept smirking, choosing not to answer her question. He rolled over, turning his back to her, yawning loudly. I'm feeling tired, Temari. Let's sleep. What the you don't get to leave me hanging like that. Naruto. She shook him, but Naruto was fast asleep in seconds, a skill he had developed on his trip with Jiraiya. Temari grumbled to herself, but turned away from him and closed her eyes. She was still upset with him, no matter how many kisses he peppered her with. Naruto didn't know whether to be impressed or put out. He had left early in the morning to get in some training. Leaving the bed proved to be quite an arduous task for him. Temari clinging to him in her birthday suit, the incredible warmth that was the result of the blanket and close contact with Temari, and Temari half draped over him, pushing onto his morning wood, which had been standing at full attention. Despite her claims to be upset with him, she was surprisingly clingy. It was definitely a good thing that she hadn't come with him and Jiraiya, otherwise he wasn't sure he would be able to train with his attention split between training and Temari. Now that he was back, he eyed the breakfast in front of him. 6 boiled eggs, perfectly cut into pieces and arranged on the plate, sprinkled on with salt and pepper and a glass of milk. Breakfast of champions, he thought dryly. He had hoped to have breakfast with her, but it seemed that she was still trying to pretend that she was upset with him. Which was why she left before he came back. As he bit into the eggs, he wondered what kind of mission would Tsunade give his team. Now that the team was comprised of 2 S ranks, it would be a disappointment if they received anything less than a high B rank. He still had a total of 40 minutes before he had to report at the mission's desk. Plenty of time. Meanwhile, at the Hokage Tower, Tsunade was at her desk, glancing disdainfully at the pile of paperwork that awaited her. She couldn't understand why Naruto wanted to be Hokage if this was the crap they had to deal with every day. With a sigh of defeat, she sat down on her desk to begin. Mentally exhausting, isn't it? She glanced up to see her sensei, Sarutobi Hiruzen, standing in the middle of the office, the barest of smirks on his face. Hiruzen hadn't changed at all in the past 3 years. After being retired, he had much more time to manage his clan affairs himself. His shoulders were much more relaxed, now that he didn't need to think about the good of the village all the time. After a long time, he could finally focus on training Konohamaru. The young Sarutobi had been begging him to train him, for when Naruto Ni-chan came back, he at least wanted to be capable enough of making him sweat. Even though Asuma was lazy even when it came to training his team, he was unexpectedly put out when Konohamaru said he didn't want him to train him. I've seen how lazy you are even with your own team, Oji-san. And I really want to get stronger by doing something instead of just playing shogi all day. It was a hilarious moment for the Sarutobi clan. Asuma understood for the first time what his nephew thought of him, and he was not at all accepting of the fact. He began training Team 10 much more seriously from then on, which Hiruzen considered a good change. He still smoked almost all the time, despite of her warnings to him that he was just damaging his lungs. But he just smoked away her worries. Tsunade sighed. I feel tired just by looking at it. Hiruzen came around to sit on the chair in front of her desk. You have no idea of how much it pleases my soul to see you sitting in the chair of Hokage. Tsunade narrowed her eyes at the comment. Others might think that you're pleased because I took over from you, but I know that you're a sadist, sensei. You're just completely satisfied to see me buried in paperwork that we used to tease you about. Hiruzen just kept a calm face. I have no idea what you're talking about. Smug bastard. So, what's reason you came here for, sensei? Hiruzen took a deep inhale from his ever-present pipe. I heard Naruto and Jiraiya returned yesterday, with another Uzumaki no less. Tsunade nodded as she signed another paper. Uzumaki Haruto. What do you think about him? Just as Tsunade was about to say something, the door to her office banged 3 times. Hokage-sama. Both former and current Hokage blinked. That was Temari's voice, and it sounded urgent and desperate. Come in. As soon as she gave the order, the door slammed open and Temari almost rushed in, an expression of barely kept in check panic on her face. What is it, Temari? Tsunade-sama, it's Gaara. He's been taken by the Akatsuki. Both of the Hokage's eyes widened at the information. The mercenary organization chose now of all times to make their move. Just as Naruto returned from his training. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? How do you know? I was contacted through my pad. Tsunade took a moment to curse as to why she wasn't directly contacted before turning her attention to the matter at hand. She was well aware how close Gaara and Naruto were, and the latter would never forgive her if he wasn't put on the rescue team. Even if he were a Jinchuriki, and sending him on the mission was basically holding him out on a silver platter for Akatsuki. Tsunade glanced at the clock and cursed. There were still 15 minutes before Naruto's team was supposed to report for a mission, but she had no choice. They were already out of time. Tora, Karasu, Nezumi, Anbu with masks of cat, crow and rat respectively, appeared behind Temari, kneeling before Tsunade. Hi, Hokage-sama. Fetch Hitaki Kakashi, Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto immediately. They are to be here within 5 minutes. Understood, Hokage-sama. With that, they disappeared in a shunshin. Hiruzen leveled a grave look at his student. Tsunade, do you think it's wise to send Naruto on this mission, when he is exactly what the Akatsuki want? Naruto beat Jiraiya at his best, and took out Kakashi without a problem, sensei. On top of that, he's mastered the Hiraishin. At this point, he might very well be the strongest ninja in the village. He can take care of himself. Tsunade almost snapped at Hiruzen. Hiruzen gave a tired sigh. Let's hope you're right, Tsunade. Less than 5 minutes later, Team 7 stood in front of her, standing at attention. Tsunade looked at each member with a sharp and steady gaze. Team 7, a few hours ago in Suna, word came to us through Temari's pad that the cage was taken by 2 Akatsuki members. Hiruzen carefully observed the reactions to the revelation. Sakura was the one who showed the most shock, followed by sadness from Temari due to the reminder. Kakashi and Naruto showed the least amount of reaction. Kakashi's eye narrowed, as it always did whenever a particularly difficult mission was assigned to him. He would try to figure out every possible way the mission could be carried out, and every possible consequence should the mission fail. He was very good at that. Naruto's expression didn't change in the slightest, but his fists tightened ever so slightly. Hiruzen mentally approved. For as much as he loathed Danzo's ways, he was right in the sense that emotions got in the way of a mission. He would have understood if Naruto got angry, or went into shock, but to have such a tight control on his emotions. Jiraiya was one hell of a teacher. Tsunade continued speaking. Therefore, you are to exercise extreme caution, and do everything in your power to get the cage back. Failure is detrimental for both the nations. Is that clear? Hi, Hokage-sama. Dismissed. How the hell did the attack succeed when Suna was expecting it? Naruto snapped, matching his stride with Temari. Gaara informed me that Suna took yours and Jiraiya-sama's warnings seriously, Naruto. Temari insisted with a glare. I don't know how, but they caught Gaara regardless. They are no joke, like you told us. S-rank heavyweights, Naruto sighed. Don't worry, Temari, we will get your brother back, by any means necessary. You've never broken a promise, Naruto. I hope this mission doesn't change that, Temari muttered worriedly. She might have been upset at him last night, but having been reminded what was at stake now, being upset for not remaining in touch with her during training seemed like a petty tantrum that a child would throw. Not a jonin. They traveled as fast as they could, and when the night arrived, they didn't take a rest. Lack of sight wasn't a problem, for their path was illuminated by the moonlight. Naruto. Naruto turned his head back slightly, to show that he was listening. What is it, Sakura? What would happen to Gaara, if his Biju were to be removed? Naruto's expression went from neutral to grave, and Temari had a bad feeling about what he was going to say. We have to be realistic here, Sakura. We have to assume the worst-case scenario, which in this mission is, that Gaara will have his Biju removed. In fact, they've already begun the process by now, most probably. Sakura gasped, and Temari looked even more crestfallen. Our Biju were sealed into us from birth, as is the case with most of our kind. There are exceptions, but I'll not go into details for that. Our bodies and chakra have been adjusting right from the beginning, to sustain both of us. Removal of a Biju would destroy the chakra network completely. It's like ripping our hearts out of our bodies. The result of that is, most certainly, death. Almost immediately. Temari was now gripped by fear, imagining Gaara's lifeless body in front of her. Like a whiplash, it hit her that that was the fate that awaited her husband, should he get caught. But that was a small possibility, and she tried not to think about it. Almost immediately. Sakura's exclamation knocked her out of her musings, as she concentrated on Naruto's answer. There are exceptions, of course. That raised Temari's hopes a little. Kyuubi's first Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Mito, lived for 3 more years before dying in her sleep. She was 113 when the new Jinchuriki was chosen. Kakashi spoke up for the first time. Not surprising, considering the Uzumaki clan is well known for their longevity and potent life force. So if Naruto were in Gaara's place, would he, Temari, dare not finish the sentence? Surprisingly, Naruto smirked. As if I would allow myself to be in that situation. Then his face turned somber. On the off chance, if I do get in that situation, I'm not sure whether I would survive or not. But you are Uzumaki. I'm half Uzumaki. There is a world of difference in that. One more day before we reach the desert, Temari said quietly. But I don't recall telling you about my secret, Sakura, Naruto curiously inquired. Sakura swallowed before answering. Tsunade-sama told me about your confrontation with Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame. They're both involved with Akatsuki. But why are they taking the Biju? Naruto was impressed by the depth of her question, but didn't let it show. At this point, only the Akatsuki know that. They started off with the Ikibi, but whether that says something about the order they are gathering the Biju in, I'm not sure. One can only imagine that they are up to no good if they're after all of them. Whatever the end result is, it would have catastrophic consequences on the world. With that, they once again descended into silence. Naruto wondered if they would be able to succeed. He had not revealed the entirety of the worst-case scenario. More like, the result of it. He wouldn't be surprised if Kakashi was the only one who picked up on the fact. They would be bringing back Gaara's dead body, and that thought filled him with rage. Night slowly became morning, and the dawn's light made itself visible over the top of the trees. Naruto finally spotted the end of the tree line, and jumped to the ground, followed by others. He looked at Tamari, who nodded. I'll take it from here. With that, they began traveling the sands. Naruto had to admit, the desert was annoyingly hot. If his clothes did not have the seals for keeping him cool, he would have been sweating by now. Now that he thought about it, how the hell was Kakashi not cooking in his mask? Naruto shook those thoughts away. The mysteries of Kakashi's mask were beyond anyone's understanding except the man himself. Sakura had been thinking hard about the mission they had departed on. From what Tsunade-sama had told her, and Naruto had confirmed for her, Akatsuki were after the Biju inside the Jinchuriki. But that meant, why did Tsunade-sama allow you to come, Naruto? You are exactly what they are after. Sakura hissed with a fierce glare. And why should Jinchuriki be forced on the sidelines? Exclamation mark. It is their right to decide whether they want to remain on the sidelines, or on the front lines. Tamari retorted, taking offense on behalf of Gaara and Naruto. Let's save the debate for the after-mission dinner, Naruto coolly suggested, but his eyes held a warning glint. Now is not the time. Sakura and Tamari wisely took the hint and fell silent. They kept traveling for 2 more hours before the gates of Suna came to view. Tamari did not even greet the guards, running straight inside the village. Tamari-san, Kankuro was poisoned. The guard ninja shouted to their backs. Tamari stumbled only briefly, before increasing her pace to the main tower. Sakura came up to her side, take me to him quickly. I'm a medical specialist. Tamari gave a stiff nod and they both raced forwards, with Naruto and Kakashi following behind. They were the last two to arrive in the room, 2 minutes after Tamari and Sakura. Naruto took stock of the people present in the room within seconds. There were a few Iryo ninja, an elderly man who Naruto did not know, Kankuro lying on the bed and an old woman whose hair was in a bun, and Baki. Just as they entered the room, the elderly couple turned towards them, and he saw recognition flash in her eyes. Interestingly, it wasn't aimed at him, but rather at his silver-haired sensei. Naruto raised an eyebrow in perplexation when the woman literally snarled. Konoha no Shiroi Kiba. The white fang of Konoha, eh? Kakashi's thoughts halted for a second, not used to being confused for his father for such a long time after his death. The woman shot forward with speed that was unbecoming for someone of her age, but Naruto immediately reacted. He easily grabbed her fist, a surprisingly heavy punch, he noted blocked her foot with his knee and caught her other fist. With that taken care of, he lightly pushed her back. She skidded back and stood up, shockingly not winded at all. The room was silent as everyone watched them. Naruto dusted off his pants and regarded her with slight annoyance. Take a good look, elder. This is Hitaki Kakashi, not Hitaki Tsukumo. But like every old person that thinks themselves wise, she casually brushed aside his statement. Don't mock me. I'll get my revenge for my son today. Looks like Tsukumo-san killed her son in the war, and now she wants revenge, he deduced, shifting his feet slightly upon seeing her advance. But the woman was stopped by the elder man. Nei-chan, he's right. There is a resemblance, yes, but he is not Hitaki Tsukumo. Huh. The woman muttered, eyes narrowing and straining to look. Then, as if a switch was flipped, she suddenly started laughing. Oh. I was just playing stupid. Ha 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 ha. Kakashi sighed in relief, not quite sure what he would have done if he had to fight an elder of Suna. Naruto on the other hand, was distinctly unimpressed by her antics. We've got a life and death situation on our hands, and you're playing around. I wonder if we should be concerned about your order of priorities or, elder. There was dead silence in the room at Naruto's statement, with Tamari giving him a sharp look. The elder man gave an inscrutable look to him, after which he labeled an annoyed look at his sister, who turned her head to the side and muttered out an apology. Naruto got the feeling that the old man approved of him. Sakura brought the room back to business and proceeded to removing the poison directly from Kankuro. Tamari sank against a wall in relief. Thank God. God isn't here. I'll take that thanks, Naruto quipped as he sat down beside her. Oh, shut up, she grumbled. From then on, Naruto kept an ear out for the conversations happening around the room. There was Sakura talking to the Iryo Nin about what they should keep an eye out for, Chiyoba-san talking to her about medicines, Baki and Kakashi talking about a fight between Kankuro and a puppeteer named Sasori. That name seems somewhat familiar, Naruto mused, taking out his bingo book. Flipping through the pages, he found what he was looking for. Sasori of the Red Sands, a puppeteer who left Suna 18 years ago. A genius of puppets, specializing in poison. And apparently, Chiyo's grandson. No doubt, we'll meet this guy on this mission. Kankuro said something about a piece of cloth, causing Tamari to shoot up from her position and hover over him worriedly. So his brother-in-law managed to snatch a piece of cloth from Sasori in case they needed to track him. Smart guy. Kankuro gave a small smile at the sight of his sister, before looking around the room. His smile widened when he spotted Naruto against the wall, flipping through a bingo book. Come to rescue your brother, eh Naruto? Naruto glanced up from his book, giving a smile and a silent nod. Kakashi gave a sharp nod to Baki, clutching the cloth in his hands. We'll find them. My pack just needs to smell this. Allow me, Kakashi. Kakashi and Baki turned to Naruto, who flipped his book shut and walked towards them. Allow me to use my foxes. They've been complaining lately that I don't give them enough work to do. Kakashi smirked under his mask. You should be taking better care of them, you know. I don't want to hear that from you of all people, was the retort. Naruto bit his thumb and slammed his palm on the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. There was a flash of smoke, and when it cleared, 6 foxes of various colors were crouched before him. This was the primary tracking squad of the Kitsune. The one crouched in front of all the foxes, a fox whose fur was as black as the night and a white dipped in tail end, spoke up. This was Toshi, Raiden's elder brother and a close friend of Naruto's. It's been a while, Naruto. Naruto nodded sympathetically. I know, but I need you right now. Track this guy for me please. All the foxes came around the hand and sniffed eagerly at the cloth. Toshi finished sniffing, and gave the order. All right. Scatter. The foxes immediately vanished from sight, with only Toshi remaining behind. We'll contact you as soon as we find him. With that, he too vanished from sight. They only had to wait a few hours before one of the foxes came back. Its fur was a regular orange, and there was a sense of satisfaction on its features. Naruto-sama. I found them. After pointing out on a map where the Akatsuki were holed up, Naruto smiled and patted the fox's head. Well done, Tenka. You can go. Wait Naruto. Tenka and Naruto turned to Kakashi, who walked towards them. Would you mind if I send you out on one more task? In answer, Tenka just looked at Naruto. Naruto just rolled his eyes and took out a storage scroll from one of his pockets, unsealed a piece of meat and tossed it to Tenka. The fox quickly ate it up and turned to Kakashi. What's it? After explaining to Tenka where he needed to go, the fox immediately took off. Naruto stood up as well. We should depart immediately, Kakashi. We know where they are, we know where Gaara is, and we're going to take him right from their grasp. Kakashi nodded at the strategy. That was all they could do at this point. I'll inform Sakura. Within an hour, they left Suna. At first, it was a surprise to all of them that Chiyoba-san was coming with them, and Tamari was stationed back at Suna, according to Tsunade's orders. Traveling swiftly, it only took them a few hours to enter Kawa no Kuni. I don't like this, Kakashi, Naruto muttered. Kakashi moved so that he was side by side with Naruto. They've gone far. I have no idea how long it takes to extract a biju, but it shouldn't be long considering it's only the Ikibi. You know of the tailed beasts? Chiyo asked from behind. Who doesn't? Naruto easily answered. Chiyo conceded his point. He wasn't going to tell her that he had one himself. Not when they'd just met, and he suspected the granny had knocked off a few of her screws. I haven't kept in touch with news concerning the tailed beasts for quite a while. Last time I did, it was when I sealed Ikibi into Gaara. She was taken aback when cold. Azure eyes snapped back at her, as cold as chips of ice. There was a barely held back rage in them, but just when she thought he would snap at her, he turned back and focused ahead. Just when he was about to speak to Kakashi, there was a flicker on his radar. He immediately stopped, holding up a fist. The others stopped right with him, posture alert. Naruto scanned the surroundings with a keen eye, all senses on high alert. What is it, Naruto? Kakashi asked. Naruto's brow furrowed. It was a brief flicker, but I can't sense any more. Whatever it was, or is, doesn't seem to want to engage. Did you catch that, Kurama? I did, but like you, I can't sense it anymore. Then it's not worth wasting time on. Naruto motioned for them to move again. It was when they had only went a few miles when Naruto sensed something again. Someone is ahead of us, 1 mile, Naruto informed everyone. Chio was impressed by the young man. While being a Jonin, the senior-most ninja usually has the authority on the mission. But Hitaki Kakashi seemed to have no problems with Naruto leading this mission. The blonde seemed to be in his element as he led without hesitation. Soon enough, they broke through the tree line and came face to face with Uchiha Itachi. Kakashi breathed out, and Naruto saw Sakura instantly freeze in shock. There was no mistaking it. Slashed headband, black cloak with red clouds, tear troughs on face and the distinctive red eyes of the Sharingan. The clearing was silent as Itachi most likely analyzed everything he could about them, trying to assess weaknesses. It's been a while, Kakashi-san, Naruto-kun. Itachi greeted them in a quiet, polite voice. It has, hasn't it, Itachi-san? Last time I saw you, I was running circles around you and your partner, Naruto replied. You have grown quite strong, I see, Naruto-kun, Itachi complimented in a quiet voice, not acknowledging the taunt. Itachi said nothing else, simply staring with his Sharingan into Naruto's azures. Naruto just averted his eyes and focused on Itachi's forehead. He wasn't afraid of being caught in a genjutsu. Regular genjutsu was a child's play for him, and he had Kurama to break him out of Sharingan genjutsu. He silently released all his gravity seals. Don't look into his eyes. It's dangerous. Kakashi ordered tersely. Then it's fortunate that there are 4 of us, Chio spoke. Fighting a Sharingan user alone is often a recipe for disaster, but since we outnumber him, we can attack from multiple directions and prevent him from using his Sharingan against more than one of us. Also, if we get caught in any of his genjutsu, the others can break it. That was the strategy that was developed long ago for combat situations against an Uchiha. Normally, that would work, but Itachi has the Mangekyo Sharingan. The genjutsu cast by the Mangekyo run their full duration in an instant. The victim will feel the full effects of the illusion, as if 3 days have passed. Don't look him in the eyes. Kakashi added, remembering far too well what it felt like to be stabbed with a sword for what felt like a small eternity. As one would expect from you, Kakashi-san. You understood all that after being affected only once. That's not the only thing that I've understood, Kakashi continued, staring Itachi fearlessly. After you used that genjutsu on me, you were considerably tired and tried to leave as soon as possible. Itachi said nothing to refute Kakashi's statements, which made Naruto wonder just how much Kakashi knew about Itachi's eyes. Apart from using a lot of chakra, your eyes seem to also carry a risk with every usage. Kakashi uncovered his headband slowly, revealing his own Sharingan. Itachi looked as blank as ever, not reacting in the slightest. Well analyzed, Kakashi-san. Not only that, but, tell me this, how bad has your eyesight gotten? Kakashi must have said something significant, because for the second time since Naruto had seen the man, Itachi was visibly startled. So much that he closed his eyes for a moment to settle himself on the inside. When he opened his eyes, they were back to being as blank as a wall. There was a moment where Kakashi and Itachi simply stared at each other. Naruto understood that Itachi must have attempted to catch Kakashi in a genjutsu once more. Then Itachi looked down, and back at Kakashi. You. Kakashi's response was quite chirpy, given the tense situation. Not this time, Itachi. Then in a quieter voice, he told Naruto, take this one, Naruto. I'll cover you. Got it. Itachi slowly pointed a finger at Naruto, not averting his gaze from Kakashi at all. It's time for you to come with me, Naruto-kun. Naruto simply raised an eyebrow as he snapped the genjutsu before it could take hold on him. His chakra density and capacity had only increased in 3 years, and Itachi's considerably less potent chakra had no chance of catching him in one genjutsu without seals. You're as good as they say. With that, everyone snapped into action. Naruto dashed forward, engaging Itachi in taijutsu. It immediately became evident just how huge the difference was between Itachi and the Sasuke he fought 3 years ago. Itachi had no problem whatsoever in predicting his moves, easily keeping up with them. Itachi showed his mastery of switching from hand to weapons, as a kunai appeared in his hand and he tried to slash Naruto with it. Naruto countered with his own kunai, and they once again locked themselves in a fight. It became evident to Itachi however, after Naruto's kunai came too close to his eyes more than once, that taijutsu was not the way to go in a fight against Naruto. He jumped back, putting Sakura in a genjutsu and then speeding through seals. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Fire style. Phoenix fire technique. A multitude of fireballs came towards them, scattering from Itachi's mouth. Kakashi jumped back to avoid them, while Naruto took a direct approach. Taking advantage of his faster perception, he jumped out of the field of the fireballs and then straight at Itachi, all in 2 flash steps. It seemed Itachi wasn't expecting that and was not in a position to dodge, for his foot caught Itachi in his side, sending him flying back. Itachi nimbly flipped in the air to make a perfect landing on the ground. Naruto didn't push his assault, choosing to stand his ground. He now had a sure shot at killing Itachi, but if he and Kakashi pushed him a bit more, maybe they could learn more about the Sharingan's techniques, in case he went up against Sasuke in a fight in the future. He had been informed that there was a higher stage of Sharingan, and wondered what abilities did that give to Itachi. Kakashi jumped to his side. Nice one. Thanks. But no more time was given for talking, for Itachi sent another jutsu their way. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. A giant fireball made its way right at them, but Naruto didn't move out of the way. Instead, he performed 2 hand seals. In his training trip, he had created a jutsu just for this situation. Bird dog. Fuden. Piasu fu yari. Wind style. Piercing wind spear. A thin, sharp burst of wind escaped his mouth in a straight line, the tip shaped into a spear. To Kakashi's shock, as soon as Naruto's jutsu collided with the fireball, they didn't clash. The wind jutsu went straight through the core of the fireball, dispersing it completely. A fire-like gate formed for the briefest of moments as the fireball dispersed, and the wind spear headed straight for Itachi, who was not expecting his fireball to be dispersed just like that. His moment of confusion cost him the fight, as the spear pierced right through the center of his chest, opening up a thin hole from which blood leaked through. But Itachi had already left the body, the instant when the wind spear pierced the heart. Itachi's hologram opened its eyes in the cave where the Ikibi was being extracted, seeing that Kisame had also been defeated a short while ago. Itachi frowned as he thought of the battle he had just lost. He had only a vague idea how that wind technique dispersed his fireball like that. Wind was supposed to be weak against fire, and could only beat fire if it were in an overwhelming amount. But Naruto's jutsu was very thing, supposed to pierce. Focused on efficiency rather than power. He supposed that the wind in that jutsu was thin enough to pierce the fireball at its core, thereby dispersing it, but that was just a theory. Had that been a real battle, Itachi doubted he would have been able to use Susanoo in time. Looking at the bingo book entry was one thing, experiencing it was a whole different one. Even without Hiraishin, Naruto had become a very dangerous man. Looks like me and my man Sasori will be capturing the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Deidara said, pleased that he would get one up on Itachi. Itachi, what can you tell us about the Kyuubi no Jinchuriki? Sasori asked in Haruko's gravelly voice. Itachi stayed silent, thinking of what to say. On one hand, he wouldn't reveal Naruto's techniques, because he didn't know them himself. Naruto hadn't used Hiraishin in the battle even once, and not many people kept bingo books with them, even majority members of the Akatsuki. People like Deidara and Hidan were fools, not bothering to keep themselves up to date with the happenings of the ninja world. He would keep it that way. On the other hand, he needed to give them something. Answer him Itachi. Pain commanded, his voice distorted in the hologram. He's the blonde one, Itachi said in a monotone, revealing nothing of importance and cut his connection. He could always use the excuse that his illness was acting up. I'm not entirely surprised. That was way too easy, Naruto mumbled, looking at the corpse of Asuna shinobi. Now I know what happened to Yura, Chio muttered. Naruto didn't bother to apologize like Kakashi did. There was no doubt in his mind that this Suna shinobi was dead long before Naruto killed him. Again. That, and he was most likely a spy. A loose end that the Akatsuki tied up. That's a good point. But Naruto didn't say that out loud, in case he was wrong. Even if that wasn't Itachi, we were beaten, Kakashi sighed. It was a delaying tactic, also meant to gather info on us. Indeed. I would say, they've already started the extraction. Perhaps, they wish to use Shukaku to create a new Jinchuriki. Chio speculated. That's a negative, Naruto instantly answered, standing up from where he was inspecting the corpse for any clues. They spent a lot of time and effort to extract the Biju from the Jinchuriki. I really don't think they're gonna create a new one, if their primary purpose was extraction. That could be true, in any case, let's put a pin on that theory for now. We have to hurry, Kakashi ordered, moving into the trees once more. As they moved through the trees, Chio once more thought deeply about her current companions. She had been sure that when Kankuro was poisoned, there would be no one except Tsunade who could cure him. Sasori was a rare genius when it came to poisons, and any poison he made was always kept for his personal use and no one else's. Chapter 4 I'm back. Man, it seriously hurts to have such a long break between chapters. But unfortunately, it can't be helped. My college has been making us give exams back to back for the last 3 months, and I fear the next month would be the same. They are really cutting into my me time, and I hate it. Anyways, this is the latest update. Since I just finished the Cage rescue arc, this chapter won't have any special fights. I do have one thing to address though. There are some people who are saying that since my update time has drastically shifted from what I have said earlier, I have abandoned my story. I assure you, this story hasn't been abandoned. My schedule is simply more filled than ever, giving me less and less time to spend on writing. The college seems to think that because we are at homes, we should be given more workload. Not only that, but as I said in my previous my mind has been drifting to a lot of areas lately, making it harder for me to concentrate. However, I will try my best to remain focused and ask you to please bear with me. I'm under a lot of stress right now. Please don't put such things in the reviews. If anyone has the right to say that this story is abandoned, it's me. And that's not happening for a long time. The breaks may be long, but I'm not abandoning this story. Sorry this is a short chapter, but the next one will be long. Enjoy. It had been almost 2 hours since they left from Suna, and while Naruto hid it well, the heat of the desert was starting to annoy him. He had seals inscribed on his clothes so that they kept him hot or cool depending on the surroundings, but there was nothing protecting his head. Not only that, but his eyes were constantly squinting due to the intense light. He wasn't the only one suffering. Even though his outfit was relatively loose, Neji's clothes were sticking to his skin due to the sweat. Sakura was sweating as well, but she was toughing it out with a scowl on her face. Tenten was wiping her face with her sleeve every once in a while. Kakashi was suffering in the back, needing Guy's support to walk, having exhausted himself with Kamui. Naruto wondered if Kakashi really should be using the technique, considering it tired him out with just a single use. The only ones who didn't seem to have any problems were Tamari, who was used to making trips in the heat, and Lee, who was better left unexplained. That spandex seriously couldn't be that comfortable. Naruto turned his head to glance back, a few snickers escaping him. The others copied him, varying amounts of amusement appearing on their faces as well as they watched the drama behind them. Guy's frustration was mounting by the second as he was forced to go practically at a snail's pace along with Kakashi. The silver-haired Jonin on the other hand, chuckled nervously as Guy began to literally growl in agitation. The energetic taijutsu master wasn't used to moving at such a slow pace. Ahahaha. Thanks for carrying me, Guy. The Mangekyo Sharingan takes quite a toll on my body, you see. Kakashi's ever-lazy drawl, now even more enhanced by his exhaustion, snapped something in Guy. That's it. That was the cue for Kakashi to begin panicking. Ah. Wait Guy. But Guy had already thrown Kakashi into the air, only for the copy ninja to land, right on his back. So intimate, I guess they're closer than I thought. Sakura deadpanned. Naruto had to press his fist into his mouth to prevent the snickers escaping from becoming full-blown laughter. This was way too precious. That looks like a fun ride, Kakashi. Naruto full-heartedly teased the man. Kakashi's glare could have scared off a full-grown tiger, if he hadn't been in such a pathetic condition. Sakura looked a bit green though, pressing her palm to her forehead. Please don't say such things, Naruto. The images are hard to get rid of. Kurama was howling in laughter in Naruto's mind, who himself was having trouble containing himself. Temari looked a bit green like Sakura, thinking to herself. 2 years in the leaf and I'm still discovering new things every day. Neji and Tenten were looking incredibly exasperated, no doubt used to the hyperactiveness and weird actions of their sensei. Kakashi spoke through gritted teeth. Naruto, get me off his back. Now. Not to worry, Kakashi. Guy cheerfully maintained, adjusted Kakashi on his back. I'll carry you everywhere if you need be. Naruto honestly thought that his stomach would burst from holding so much laughter within. It wasn't helping at all that Kurama wouldn't stop laughing. What he was about to say next wouldn't earn him any favors with Kakashi, but it would be so much fun. It had been so long he had played a good prank. Now we can travel much faster, Guy-san. Guy's answer was an ecstatic shout. Yes. Let's go. With that, Guy ran forward with a burst of speed that left a dust cloud behind him. Naruto turned to look at the one person who was happy with this development. Lee had his hands curled in fists, head bowed and trembling. When his head shot up, his eyes were swimming with tears. What youth! Their vigor is overflowing under the hot sun, which only fans their flames of youth. Come Neji, let us also bask in our youth. Lee was the second streak of dust. Idiots, the pair of them, Tenten sighed, shaking her head. Naruto took a deep breath, placing his hands on his hips. At the rate they're going, the Hokage is gonna wonder what happened to the rest of the team. Sakura slumped a little. I really don't want to sprint across the desert and the forest. It's alright, you don't have to. Naruto placated her. In fact, you don't have to move at all. What are you talking about? Neji questioned with an eyebrow raised. Naruto placed his palm on the ground. I marked the gates of Konoha. We can simply flash there, he explained with a grin, easily tracking the dynamic duo with his sensing. He pushed his sensing further until his mark on the gate was within his radar. But aren't you out of range? Konoha is quite far away right now, Tenten murmured worriedly. My senses have only improved in 3 years, Tenten, Naruto assured her. Temari smirked as she knelt beside him. Then you already have the mark in your sights, don't you? Her answer was a smirk. She then stood up. Then what are we waiting for? Grab on. Wait. Naruto's command stopped everyone in surprise. He then elaborated, speaking in a whisper as if disclosing an important secret. We need to have the perfect timing. Guy crossed the gates, coming to a halt. He pointed his index finger towards the sky in a gesture of victory, not even noticing that his head slammed into Kakashi's chin, knocking back the man painfully. First. Not quite. He turned around, eyes widening in shock when he saw everyone except Lee sitting against the wall. They looked quite comfortable, meaning that they had arrived quite some time ago, and were waiting for them. Naruto was the one who spoke, standing up. The other followed the suit. We have been waiting for quite some time, Guy-san. Kakashi was glaring with every ounce of rage that he could muster in his exhausted state. He knew exactly what the blonde had done, and was cursing up a storm in his head. Naruto caught his eye and winked, telling the man that the blonde knew exactly what he was thinking. Guy was completely floored, never having imagined that he of all wood people would be the last in a race. In his shock, he didn't even think what had actually happened. A shout distracted everyone as they turned to the gates, seeing the last of group arriving. Lee raised both of his hands, shouting in a mix of victory and defeat. Then he noticed the group staring at him. And Naruto nodded, completely serious. Now that everyone is here, let's report to the Hokage. He then set off, with the others following. Neji was the last, but only so he could pat Lee on the shoulder. Sorry Lee, but you were last. The Hyuga kept his poker face up until he was walking side by side with Naruto. He chuckled, I have to say, that was quite brilliant. Naruto smirked in response. A good prank requires timing, my friend. Eventually though, he will know what happened. He's not a complete idiot. Thanks to you, they will now drive me and Tenten up the wall with all the extra training. You're welcome. XXXXXXX. Ah, now this is what I call a soak. Tamari sighed happily as she sunk in the jacuzzi, the hot water soothing all her muscles. How come you are so tired? Naruto questioned curiously. Tamari shook her head. Not physically. All that stress of Gaara almost dying, she understandably hesitated a bit, really had me in a pinch. Naruto moved forward, putting both his hands on either side of Tamari. He leaned in, putting fleeting kisses on her neck. He asked her in a suggestive tone, then perhaps you would like a massage too. Unwind. Tamari smiled as she pretended to think about it. It doesn't sound like a bad idea at all. Naruto's hands started drifting down. Then what are we waiting for? Because we need to talk. Naruto stopped his advances, slowly leaning back to see his wife's serious eyes. He drifted back to his end, deciding that massages and sex could come later. What do you want to talk about? Tamari seemed hesitant, but she took a deep breath and spoke. I know that the Akatsuki are a mercenary terrorist organization that wants to collect all the Biju for some nefarious purpose. This organization is made up of S-rank missing nin, right? Naruto nodded, motioning her to continue. To Konoha's knowledge, 5 people have been identified as a part of that organization. Naruto shook his head. Itachi, Kisame, Deidara and Sasori are the only ones that Konoha and Suna are aware of. Tamari interjected. But Orochimaru is a former member of that organization, right? What's to say he still isn't supporting it? Naruto waved a finger at her. Orochimaru left the organization to pursue his own goals of destroying Konoha and achieving immortality in an Uchiha body. In fact, Jiraiya believes Itachi is the reason Orochimaru left Akatsuki. The prick tried to play smart with Itachi, and got his ass handed to him. That is why Orochimaru shifted his interests from Itachi to Sasuke. Tamari had a surprised expression as she digested the new information. I wasn't aware of that. Shiten waved a hand. What I'm trying to say is, there is a probable chance that, and it might not even be true, Sasuke might join Akatsuki in the future. Naruto folded his hands. This was a serious matter. It had occurred to him as well that Sasuke might join the mercenary organization. He knew that the Uchiha was hellbent on destroying his brother, and Orochimaru won't remain in his way for long. What he wasn't seeing was Temari's reasoning. Why would she think Sasuke would join Akatsuki now of all times? Come to the point, Tamari, he requested, leveling a look of utmost seriousness at her. Tamari looked equally serious. My question is, what will you do if you face Sasuke, after he has joined the Akatsuki? So that's what she wanted to know. She raises a good question. Indeed. Now that I think about, I myself am at a loss to what I would do. You could simply cut off his head and end his life. It would solve most of the problems this world has been having. The suggestion was spoken so innocently that it actually became part of a normal conversation for a second. Naruto scoffed inwardly. Duly noted, though I would prefer not to do that. Then what will you do? That's the question, isn't it? Tamari watched Naruto thinking, though to her it was more like he was having an inside conversation with his prisoner. It was sort of impressive that his gaze was locked onto her, and actually seemed to be focused, when instead he was chatting to a completely different person. Finally, after a long moment, Naruto spoke. I would need to speak with him in person. 3 years is a long time for someone to change, and Sasuke might have changed as well. Only by looking into his eyes, will I be able to tell my answer. The answer was very vague, and it didn't satisfy Tamari at all, evident by the small frown on her face. That doesn't make any sense. Naruto shrugged. Maybe not to you, but it does to me. Silence settled between them for a few moments, which was then broken by Naruto clapping once. Now that the serious talk is over. Before Tamari could catch up with his thoughts, she was already out of the bath, in Naruto's arms and on the way to the bedroom. Earlier talk was put at the back of her mind as she giggled. You can't help yourself, can you? Naruto's reply was fervent as he almost tossed her on the bed. I've been waiting for 3 years. My patience is all but gone. 2 hours later, Naruto was walking to the hospital with a spring in his step, whistling cheerfully. He was also feeling noticeably lighter, and thoroughly satisfied, like some sort of stress that he had been constantly under was taken off from him. 3 years worth of not having sex. He still had yet to wipe off the smile on his face that threatened to turn into a stupid grin. Tamari would be feeling that ache in her legs for a while, which was why he had left her sleeping in their bed. He entered the hospital, and headed straight to the room where Kakashi was. Opening the door, he saw that the Jonin was sitting up, laying down, eyes closed. Figuring he was asleep, Naruto kept his footsteps silent when approaching the bed. He keenly observed Kakashi and after a few moments, spoke. You can stop pretending to be asleep. Ah, you caught me. Kakashi opened his right eye, keeping the other one closed. Have you come to visit me because you were worried, Naruto? I'm touched. Naruto snorted. Don't be. I actually came to see just how much that I exhausted you. Kakashi sighed, closing his eye. It exhausts me quite much. My Sharingan drains me enough as it is. Taking it to the next level and then using it, I'm not surprised I ended up getting exhausted. But you used it only once, Naruto pointed out. I haven't exactly trained my Mangekyo, Naruto. Back in our fight, it took much time to just pinpoint my target, Kakashi explained. Maybe you shouldn't use it if only a single use tires you out, Naruto murmured. Kakashi smiled. It's simply a matter of getting used to it. After I'm out of here, I intend to train my Mangekyo so I can at least last 4 to 5 before dropping. Naruto tilted his head in acknowledgement. Well, I'm out of here. Tsunade called me a few minutes ago, and I'm already late. See you later, Kakashi. Tsunade had sent a summons 15 minutes ago, but she would hopefully forgive him for being late. He reached the Hokage Tower, waved to the guards and ventured inside, absently checking over what everyone was doing. Some people were just standing around, talking with each other. Most were just carrying around paperwork, and he spotted 4 people playing cards not so discreetly under the pretense of doing paperwork. Naruto smirked before he quickly moved up the stairs. Walking briskly, he arrived right outside Tsunade's office and knocked thrice. Come in. He opened the door, and immediately took account of who was in the room. There was Sakura, Shizune, Tsunade facing the window with her back to him, and then there was Gigi. His mouth automatically stretched into a smile on seeing him. He hadn't changed much in 3 years, except he was far more relaxed than Naruto had ever seen him. Guess retirement is that you. Tsunade turned around, scowling at him. You're late. What the hell was it that took you so long? Naruto gave a short bow. Apologies, Tsunade-sama. I was going under some therapy. Sakura quirked a brow, as did Shizune. You need therapy. For what? Naruto's grin stretched out in full force. If you really want me to tell you, it goes something like, actually, we don't need to know. Hiruzen hurriedly intervened, knowing exactly what Naruto was going to say. 3 years with Jiraiya, it was hard not to pick up when some perverseness was about to come into play. Naruto was obviously going to speak something that would terribly embarrass the ladies in the room, and Tsunade would probably throw the desk at him. He really didn't want his late sensei's desk to be smashed to pieces. Naruto's grin dropped. Spoil my fun, why don't you? Then his demeanor turned serious. What is it that you called me for then? Tsunade turned to face him fully. Naruto, Sakura revealed to me some information given to her by Sasori of the Red Sands before he died. Seeing him silent, she continued. Sasori revealed to Sakura, just before he died, that he had a spy in Orochimaru's ranks. 6 days from now on, at noon, Orochimaru will be there. Naruto said nothing, but inside, he was sighing. I know what she's going to say next, and I can't fault her. But I can't be the only one who sees this as wrong on so many levels. You're not. Information is like food in your world, and you humans are the greediest of the animals. You can't help but eat it, uncaring if it is good or bad. Naruto ignored his partner's ranting. Which team are you sending then? Sakura has volunteered to go, Tsunade answered. Naruto took careful note that Tsunade used the word, volunteer, instead of, requested. Even though Kakashi is out of the commission, Team 7 can be ready to go with a replacement team leader, Tsunade elaborated further. Of course, if you choose to go, you might get a bonus as well. Naruto said nothing for a moment, keeping his hands in pockets. He thought carefully about it all. He knew what bonus Tsunade was hinting at, and he fought back a scowl. This mission could possibly give them some information on Sasuke's whereabouts. His mind flashed back to his earlier conversation with Temari. It was highly unlikely that Sasuke was a part of Akatsuki right now, but the question still came up. What would he do, if he came face to face with Sasuke? You could just kill him. Naruto didn't reply. He wasn't sure of his resolve. Laws dictated that the missing nin should be killed with extreme prejudice, yet the small part of him that still considered Sasuke his friend, and not beyond saving, wanted to bring him back home. What should he do? Maybe, I could just beat him black and blue like last time, and then bring him back. While I would prefer you kill him, this is not an entirely unpreferable alternative. I look forward to your showdown, Naruto. That decided, I need to confirm one thing before I agree to this mission. I agree to this mission, Naruto answered at last. But before everyone could take his statement as an unconditional agreement, he spoke once more. But I need to check a few things first, if you don't mind. Tsunade didn't outright show it, but she was a bit confused. Sure. What is it? Before she'd even finished speaking, Naruto turned and stared Sakura right in the eyes. The sudden scrutiny caused the girl to flinch a little at the intensity of his stare. He wasn't glaring at her, but she felt like he was searching for something in her eyes. After a few moments, she began to fidget, a sign that she was beginning to get uncomfortable under his stare. What is it, Naruto? Sakura, he began, fully turning to face her, I need your word that you would be able to do the right thing when the time comes. That statement brought a wave of confusion in the room, since there was a lack of context in his words. However, Sakura sensed a certain depth in his words, and her voice was cautious. What do you mean? There is a chance that you will meet our former teammate on this mission, and I am well aware of how you have feelings for him. Will those feelings interfere in the mission should we be required to kill him? The question surprised everyone in the room. No one expected such a question to come out of Naruto's mouth, who was well known for his fierce loyalty to his comrades. Sakura's eyes had gone wide with shock, and she had barely kept from gasping. She knew that Naruto didn't want to kill Sasuke, evidenced by how he had brought him back to the village alive, albeit barely. But looking in his eyes, she found an unwavering resolve. She found it hard to believe that 3 years had changed him so much that he was willing to kill his former comrade now. She couldn't see a doubt in his eyes. What she was unaware of, was that the resolve was to do whatever was required of him. Should the situation arise, he would have to steel his resolve to do what was necessary. Even if it meant killing Sasuke. But in 3 years, Sakura had changed as well. There was a reason that Tsunade had agreed to take on her as an apprentice. Tsunade had begun teaching her the secret to her super strength technique, and in turn Sakura had to promise her that she would get rid of any feelings that she had for Sasuke. I will not have any of my shinobi sympathizing with a known traitor, were her exact words. At the time, the request was like a hammer straight to her heart. Sakura had been forced to evaluate her feelings for the Uchiha, and as painful as it was, she had come to conclusion that she didn't truly love him, as she originally believed. She was infatuated, she was obsessed, but never truly in love. She had been living in a fantasy world back then. Tsunade had ripped off the pink-tinted glasses from her face, showing her the reality. Sakura had been forced to admit that Sasuke was not who she believed he was. He only had one ambition, and he didn't care who got caught up in his path. The last straw was when Tsunade told her that Sasuke had been completely willing to kill Naruto. Naruto hadn't mentioned it in his report, but instead chose to tell Tsunade. Naruto had to escape a Chidori to the heart. That was the strike that killed the last of the feelings she had for Sasuke. From then on, she trained hard to become a kunoichi who could actually be useful in the field, instead of having to rely on her teammates to get her out of dangerous spots. Taking a breath to steady herself, she replied while looking back into his eyes. They will not, because they don't exist. The succinct reply threw Naruto off for a moment, but he steadied himself. He stared hard in her eyes, looking for any sign of lie, but she stared back unflinchingly. His stare lightened, and the side of his mouth quirked up just for a moment. Then I don't need to worry, he said at last. Sakura found herself fighting down a grin. Naruto trusted her to watch his back in this mission, which was more than what she could say for when they were kids. Naruto turned to Tsunade and Hiruzen. You know very well that this is most likely a trap. Why are you authorizing this mission? Tsunade took a deep breath. We have no illusions that it's not a trap. However, there is a small chance that it could prove to be otherwise. Which is why this will only be a reconnaissance mission. You are to only meet with the spy and no more. Avoid combat at all if possible. Naruto nodded as he began to think of just how many ways this could go wrong. Orochimaru was no fool, but could he know about the spy in his ranks? The only reason he could think of Sasori having a spy in Orochimaru's village was to keep an eye on the snake. That means, the spy would have to be pretty close to Orochimaru to constantly keep track of his activities and whereabouts. Who could it be? His thoughts were interrupted when Hiruzen spoke. Since Team 7 is 2 members short, me and Tsunade have come up with a replacement. However, you get a say in the replacement being on your team, Naruto, since you are the only Jonin on the team right now. I would not recommend the refusal, however. Naruto folded his arms. You have someone in mind. More like I was offered and not in a position to refuse, Tsunade muttered, a minor scowl on her face. As for leader, maybe you can share the leadership with the Jonin I appoint. As for whom, I need a bit of time. Dismissed. Naruto took careful note of the scowl on her face as he exited the office. Whoever this person was, Tsunade was not that happy to take his help. The one person that the Hokage hates, it can't be the elders. Those old coots don't command any shinobi. But Danzo does. Ah. That solves the mystery of the third teammate. It's a root member. Think we can get rid of him somehow. She did say the refusal is up to you. I meant in a permanent manner. Naruto could almost see the grin in Kurama's answer. Never let your ruthlessness go, Naruto. As for how, let's just say Danzo really shouldn't be bringing out his rats in the open. Someone just might mistake them for an enemy. I see where you're going, partner. Tsunade stared at the door, reevaluating her thoughts on her fellow blonde. Shizune came up to her side. He has changed, hasn't he? She questioned softly. Tsunade sighed. Not much, I believe, she answered, recalling how blunt Naruto was when he confronted her 3 years ago. I thought he would refuse the mission, considering how obvious of a trap this is, Shizune wondered. He knows this is a trap, Shizune, Hiruzen revealed, walking around the desk. And if it does turn out to be a trap, Naruto is most suited to get his team out of it. That, or he is simply going on this mission because he wants to ensure Sakura remains alive, Tsunade speculated. Either way, he must remain cautious, Hiruzen said in a grim tone. I have a feeling that something else is at play here. Naruto was walking down the streets, lost in thought about the upcoming mission. Just as he was about to turn into a lane, he paused. A moment later, he smiled upon sensing the familiar chakra signature. He continued forward until he came under the shade of a tree. It's good to see you after so long, Shino. Indeed, it was the Aburame. He wore a high-collar jacket traded in for a hooded one in the same color with the hood up, and the top he now wore under it extended all the way up with clasps to close it to just above his nose, and below his jacket to his knees, where black pants now adorned his legs and white tape disappeared under black shinobi sandals. He had grown as well. Naruto was perhaps only an inch taller than the bug user. Naruto, glad to know you were able to recognize me. His tone really hadn't changed much, but Naruto was just able to hear warmth under the robotic voice. The shades give it away, I'm afraid, Naruto revealed with a grin. He then sensed another chakra signature, his grin widening. He turned around just to see something large land right in front of him. Holy shit, Kiba. What happened to Akamaru? Kiba had changed as well. The fur-lined jacket was replaced with a black-collared jacket without the hood to cover up spiky brown hair, a mesh undershirt peeking out from above the dip in the clasped collar. Black shinobi pants covered up to his calves and zippered black shinobi sandals. Akamaru wasn't far behind. In fact, Naruto would so far as to say that Akamaru had the most impressive growth out of the rookies, despite not having seen them all. Gone was the puppy that would fit inside Kiba's jacket, and what stood in its place was an impressive hound worthy of being called a ninkin. Kiba blinked in surprise before breaking out in a grin of his own. Yo Naruto. I knew it was you. Your scent has been popping up and I thought you were back, but never saw you, he exclaimed cheerfully, hopping off the dog to jog over to Naruto. They shared a handshake and hug, after which Naruto walked over to Akamaru. Actually, I just came back from a mission from Suna, Naruto informed him, scratching Akamaru behind the ears, earning a pleased growl from the dog. I'd say Akamaru has grown the most out of us all, he commented, chuckling as the dog stood up on his hind legs, licking Naruto's face enthusiastically. And you're now the tallest of us all, Kiba grumbled good-naturedly. Naruto looked around. And if you two are here, then the only one remaining is Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled as he turned around. There she was, and dare Naruto say it, Hinata was easily one of the most beautiful girls around here. She had filled out such even more than Tamari, and her hair was now longer, falling to her waist, but her bangs were still cut princess style. She still wore her jacket, but it was no longer bulky as it was, showing hints of her figure. The shinobi pants were long and her Hitai 08 was still around her neck. I almost feel bad for your father, he said in a mock sympathetic tone. She smiled and shook her head. Don't be. He manages just fine. Her voice was still as soft as ever, but it now held confidence and a pleasant lack of stuttering. The 3 years were good to her, it seemed. After speaking some more, they parted ways, leaving Naruto alone once again. He wondered whether he should head home or not, but he decided against it. With Tamari asleep, there wasn't much he could do except run over some fuinjutsu ideas. Or, I could go visit someone else. He stretched out his senses and found his target was back at his home. He changed directions and walked towards a place he hadn't visited since he was 4. Walking for 10 minutes, he arrived at his destination. It really hasn't changed much, he sighed nostalgically as he gazed upon the Sarutobi compound. The last time he came here was the first time he felt like he had a family. Gigi had brought him here when it was his birthday. He had been introduced to Konohamaru's parents, who weren't expecting him back then. He had been introduced to Asuma as well. The Jonin really didn't hate him back then, but he had no love for Naruto either. He kept his interactions with Naruto neutral, which his 4-year-old self was grateful for. He approached the guards at the gates of the compound. I'm here to see the Sandame. Is he available? He returned quite recently. In fact, the guard replied, escorting him inside. There were a number of people he spotted, either talking or training. Some people saw and started whispering to each other, but he ignored them. Soon, they were right outside the Sandame's home. Naruto told the guard that he can make it from here, earning a wary look from the guard, but was eventually allowed to go inside. The inside of the house was something that Naruto always thought the old man was. Simple, practical, old, warm and weary. It wasn't that the house walls were crumbling, but Naruto knew for a fact that the old man lost his wife the night he was born. His eyes flickered towards an old photo of the old man and his wife when they were young. Even in the picture, his eyes held a love and joy that Naruto had never seen. His wife, Sarutobi Bawako, had been beautiful. No doubt her loss would have scarred the old man for life. Maybe it was also the reason the house seemed weary. It had been missing one of its occupants for years. She was beautiful, the voice behind his spoke fondly. Naruto slowly turned, giving no indication that he was surprised. Gigi was smiling at him, in the way that all old people did. I know what you're thinking. You must miss her, Naruto commented, putting his hands in his pockets. Hiruzen released a sigh that conveyed exactly how old he was. Every day. He turned around and gestured Naruto to follow him, which he did. It just hasn't been the same after she died. It was like the heart of the family that kept it together broke, and with it broke away the family. Asuma took her death particularly hard, which wasn't surprising considering how he was always closer to her than me. Her death pushed Asuma further away from me. He and Naruto entered his office, and sat down on either sides of the table. He put some tobacco in and lit up his pipe, taking a long inhalation. I didn't even get a chance to bond with him again when I was Hokage once again, after your father passed away. If it reminds you of so painful times, why do you still hang that picture? Naruto asked curiously. Hiruzen smiled as he gave the answer. It doesn't remind me of just painful times. Naruto nodded and took a deep breath, suddenly wondering what to say. It had been 3 years after all, and he had matured. He could no longer ask anything without hesitation. How are you, Gigi? Hiruzen smiled a little more. Better than ever. Naruto arched an eyebrow. Really? You are 3 years older and still smoke like there's no tomorrow. Hiruzen gave a loud, heartfelt laugh. You never fail to make me laugh, Naruto. Yes, I may be 3 years older, but I have felt decades younger ever since I gave the hat to Tsunade. In our world, people are lucky to reach my age and even luckier to retire at leisure. For me, retirement feels like I'm living in a dream. Naruto chuckled at the last statement. I'm sure it does. It is rare in the shinobi world for people to achieve their dreams. They sat in silence for a moment, after which Naruto spoke up. So how do you spend your free time now? Hiruzen released a puff of smoke, leaning back in his seat. Well, even before I gave up the hat, Konohamaru had been begging me to train him. I have been training him quite regularly since the last 3 years. Naruto smirked. Is that right? Then he must have gotten quite good. Hiruzen gave a noncommitting grunt. He has improved, that's for sure. But he still has ways to go before he becomes Chunin level. Naruto smiled. You have high standards, Gigi. Hiruzen snorted. I'm the Sandaime Hokage, boy. Of course I have high standards. You think my students became the Sannin just like that? Naruto completely agreed with that argument. No, they didn't. And I see that you have got quite the bingo book entry, Hiruzen said with a knowing look. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. Actually, it was something I never expected, to be honest. Oh. I didn't think that scaring a team of Iwa shinobi would bump me up to SS rank. Hiruzen folded his fingers and rested his chin on top of them, leaning forward. Would you mind telling me what happened? Naruto smiled and shook his head. No, not at all. Flashback. You know, sometimes I wonder just how the hell you became a spymaster, Naruto grumbled. Jiraiya scowled and turned away, barely pouting. How was I to know that the client would double-cross us with the Yakuza? Naruto's deadpan was impressive. We both know you thought that the guy was shady from the start. Jiraiya shook his head. We deal with a lot of shady clients, but very few had the nerve to double-cross us. Besides, the guy hadn't done anything significant to be on my radar. My spy network is currently being stretched almost to the limits to keep tabs on our resident mercenary group. Naruto teased, waving a finger. You know that's a pretty weak excuse for you. Surely you could have asked me to keep an eye on him with a few of my clones. Jiraiya turned his scowl on him. Then why didn't you say so? Naruto shrugged his shoulders, completely unbothered by the scowl. You were in charge of the mission. Besides, I thought you knew best when it came to dealing with shady people, so I trusted you. Now, I'll be a bit more careful. Watch it, brat, Jiraiya growled, itching to just pound a fist into Naruto's skull. My greatest apologies, honorable spymaster, Naruto bowed, and Jiraiya could almost see the sarcasm oozing like a waterfall. Taking a deep breath, he counted to 10 and let go. Sometimes, Naruto got under skin too well. They were assigned a mission to recover a noble's stolen property that someone had stolen. Turned out, the clan was practically in a war with another, almost sister-like clan over the possession of a sword that was said to never dull, no matter how many times it was used. The lesson that Jiraiya had taught him when it came to situations like these was, stay neutral if you can help it. If it wasn't your business, don't make it your business. Unfortunately, they were hired by one of the two clans to steal the sword and give it to them. Between Naruto and Jiraiya, stealing the sword was no biggie. In fact, the only interesting thing was that Naruto had to impersonate a female servant to infiltrate the other compound. A servant who had a secret affair going on with the head. He had to make it so that the female servant wouldn't get into trouble after he was finished wearing her disguise. Stealing the sword was easy, but the return was unexpected. Turned out, the Yakuza had somewhat loose lips and the head of the clan who they were working for had the Yakuza on a payroll already, and had dispatched them to steal the sword from Naruto and Jiraiya, terminating them afterwards. Konoha mission contracts had a specific clause in them. If the client were to breach the contract, the Konoha shinobi would retaliate with extreme prejudice. So Jiraiya and Naruto easily dispatched the Yakuza, went back to the trader and acted as if they didn't know anything about who sent the Yakuza after them. The guy was forced to give them the money and after Jiraiya had finished him off. They later returned the sword from where they stole it. It was somewhat fun, but Naruto had no wish to deal with something like that again. They entered a small town and rented a room in an inn. Jiraiya went off to do Kami knows what, while Naruto decided that a bath in the nearby stream would do him some good. Grabbing a towel and some spare clothes, he set out in a leisurely walk to the stream. Finding a particularly secluded spot so that he wouldn't have to deal with the embarrassment of nudity, he jumped into the water, letting the cool water of the stream relax him. But even when bathing, he kept himself aware of his surroundings. And, he picked up 4 chakra signatures, 3 mid to high Chunin level and 1 Jonin, converging on his location. He sighed. Can't I catch a break sometime? Not even a minute later, he jumped out of the water as a water dragon formed and tried to swallow him up. A scowl of irritation etched itself onto his face when he faced his attackers, completely nude. The first thing he picked up was that it was a team from Iowa, surrounding him in a semicircle. 2 boys, 1 man and a girl, from left to right. The boys were gaping at him, and then they focused their gazes right above his head, cheeks red and clearly feeling awkward. Nothing worth noting about them. The Jonin of the group was looking at him right in the face, but the slight twitch of his eyebrow told Naruto that the Jonin was trying to not let the awkwardness get to him. Nothing worth noting here as well. The girl of the group was not even trying to look away. Her face was completely red and her eyes kept drifting downward every now and then, her expression a mix of embarrassment, rage and dear Kami, was that appreciation. Absently, he noted that she had pink eyes, a very unusual color for the eyes. He forced any embarrassment out of his system as he tried to look as dignified as he could while being naked. What are you guys doing? His question was addressed to the Jonin, who straightened up a little. His eyes hardened and he spoke with barely hidden contempt. To kill you, Namikaze. So it was the old grudge of Yondaime killed our relatives. Still, he would humor them. Maybe he could have some fun here if he played things right. May I ask why? One of the boys spoke up. Why, you know very well, bastard. Don't play dumb with us. Naruto adopted a quizzical expression as he folded his arms. No, I really don't. Would you please tell me why? Well, I actually know, but I want to hear from you guys. The girl spoke up, no longer being able to take his nudity. First put on some clothes, damn it. Naruto smirked as he held up his arms up, in surrender. Hey, don't yell at me like it's my fault. You caused me to jump out of the stream. He bent down and picked up his towel, wrapping it around his waist. Plus, I would really prefer if you kept your eyes upward. Don't think I didn't catch your glances, Ms. Pervert. A vein visibly pulsed on her temple as she flushed pink, like her eyes. I'm not a pervert, asshole. Okay, enough. The Jonin apparently had enough of the pointless conversation. He then turned to Naruto, a look full of loathing on his face. We have a score to settle, Namikaze. What score? The calmness with which Naruto asked his question seemed to push the girl over the edge. The score that your damn father leveled against us, asshole. He slaughtered 1,000 of our shinobi without a second thought. Do you have any idea what that did to the name of our village? All we are remembered for is how badly we lost to your father in the war. He tore up so many families, mine included. He killed my mother. By the end, tears were sliding down from her eyes. Naruto glanced to the others, everyone had hard faces were raging bubbling in their eyes. He took a deep breath. This was a delicate situation, and it should be handled as such. It would be oh so easy to antagonize them, but he had to attempt a reason, even if it had almost a negligible chance of working. He looked the girl right in the eyes. I understand your anger, trust me I do. But you must hear my argument before you attempt any action, he pleaded. The girl only clutched at her kunai tighter. What could you have to say now? Naruto narrowed his eyes. First of all, it was a war. Your village was not the only one that suffered. Losses were dealt on both the sides. He held up a hand to stop anyone from shouting back. Second, don't forget that it was your village that started the war. You forced a retaliation from Konoha. All my father did was protect his home. What you call slaughter, my father called duty. Don't think for a second that he enjoyed ending 1,000 lives and scattering hundreds of families. He did what was necessary. Would you not do the same if you were in his place? Would you not kill to protect your home? He looked directly at the girl as he asked his questions. The anger in her eyes was slowly being replaced by frustration. Either at the wait to kill him, or being unable to find an answer to his question. And lastly, my father is dead. He has been for 15 years now, since the day of my birth. The man you wanted dead is dead, and he didn't even spend one day with his son before he died. What more do you want? The day the news of Yellow Flash's death reached Iowa, we rejoiced. The Jonin said in a low voice. We celebrated the fact that the murder of many families of the village had finally met his end. But it doesn't end there. We searched, for years. We promised ourselves that we would wipe out any speck of the Namikaze that lived, but found none. But the day the news of your identity reached us, you don't know how angry it made us, Namikaze. To think that bastard had a child. To think that he created his family, while slaughtering ours. It didn't sit well with us. Which was why we kept an eye on you, waiting for our moment. His eyes hardened with determination as he fell into a stance with the others. Now that we have the perfect opportunity, do you really think I would be swayed by pretty words from you? Do you think any of us would? Naruto unfolded his hands. I thought not. Any last words before you join your father, bastard? Naruto sighed. This grudge of yours is nonsensical. Insolent fool. It was one of the boys that shouted, throwing a horde of kunai at him. Naruto blurred away in a shunpo, leaving an after image and appearing a few meters away. Come on guys, think about it. Why are you trying to kill me for something that my father did? It doesn't make any sense. Just die, scumbag. The boy who had thrown the kunai rushed at him, trying to slash at him. Naruto's eyes hardened. Reasoning had failed. Now was the time to make a point. He easily caught the hand of the kunai by the wrist, delivering palm thrust in the chest to push him back several feet. His danger sense buzzed, making him duck and miss a slash at his neck. He blurred in a shunpo once more, appearing right behind his attacker the second boy and kicked him in the back, causing him to crash into a tree. Spikes suddenly burst from the ground, and he would have been skewered if he hadn't jumped up high. His eyes widened a fraction when the Jonin met him midair, with an expression of rage and a stab on the way to his heart. The stab connected, and his image burst to reveal a rock the size of a human fist. The Jonin narrowed his eyes in frustration as he landed, looking around for the blonde. Kuretsuchi got up from where she had cast the jutsu, looking around desperately. The boys came back from where they had been thrown, and were looking around as well. Suddenly, the Jonin shouted as he jumped up. Duck. Everyone fell to the ground as the razor-focused jet of water slicked in an arc, cutting through all the spikes and felling them, allowing everyone a clear sight on the field once more. If not for the situation, it would have been a funny sight. Naruto in a towel, hands in a seal, confused expression on his face and water dripping from his mouth. He straightened and looked at the Jonin, annoyed. You made me miss a perfect shot. The Jonin grinned toothily, and rushed at Naruto, engaging in close combat. His movements were noticeably more polished than the Chunin, but he was a bit slow for Naruto's eyes. He caught a back roundhouse kick by the ankle, and swung the Jonin into an arc, and into the ground. He then lifted him again and threw him towards the girl who was rushing at him. You should be grateful I didn't give you third-degree burns, Naruto remarked, not at all fazed by the attacks. Kuretsuchi saw red and sped through seals. Doden. Dosekiryu. Earth style. Earth and Stone Dragon. Naruto blurred away once more at the last moment, appearing far from the Iwa shinobi. He bent down and picked a kunai. This would have been a lot easier if I just had my special kunai, he muttered. What did you say? One boy shouted, hands readying a jutsu. Naruto made a surprised expression. Oh, I was just saying that this would have been much easier for me if I just had my special kunai. You know, three-pronged and a formula written on the handle. I'm sure you know of it. Kuretsuchi paled. He couldn't possibly know that jutsu, right? It was very advanced. The Jonin voiced her thoughts, shock clear in his voice. You know that jutsu. Naruto smiled, part charmingly and part mischievously. I am his son, aren't I? Then his face cleared of all expression so fast that it was a whiplash. And I have you marked. Before them, he literally vanished from his place. Not blurred, vanished. As if swished out of existence. She moved to shout to everyone, to move, but she was frozen in shock, as were the others. But they moved before she did, falling forward, faces slamming onto the ground, life extinguished from their eyes. It was over in a flash. She slowly turned her neck towards where the boys were now lying, a pool of their own blood. Namikaze was walking towards her calmly, blood dripping from the kunai in his hand. She wordlessly snarled and was about to move when she froze, this time for real. It wasn't shock, she really couldn't move a muscle. It felt like various rods were jammed into her body, holding her in place. Kanashibari no Jutsu. Namikaze revealed the answer to the question in her mind, now standing right in front of her. Something very useful for me in the field. He grabbed her hand holding the kunai, and gently moved it down, and she wasn't able to do a thing to resist. She felt ashamed and disgusted at herself for being so weak. First her mother gets killed by the father, now she was going to be killed by the son. I'm not going to kill you, he said, as if reading her thoughts. He then leaned in, his face right by hers, and despite herself, she blushed brightly as she felt his hot breath on her ear. Hate or not, it was undeniable that Namikaze was extremely hot, and very well endowed. You are going to take your comrades and return to Iowa. You will tell your cage exactly what happened here. You instigated this fight, not me. You provoked me, and I retaliated. You fought, I won, and you lost. Here's a warning to you. From here on, if any Iowa shinobi provokes me just to settle an old grudge, I will retaliate tenfold, he hissed, unknowingly causing Kuretsuchi to shiver at the menace behind the words. To summarize, back off, his words were literally a feral growl in her ear. He then stepped back, no sign of any rage or the menace with which he spoke. This is my first and last warning to Iowa, he informed her, walking towards his clothes now. He then turned to face her one last time. Raijin no Te. Never grants mercy twice, his eyes were flinty chips of azure ice. Remember that. He left the clearing after that, leaving her frozen. Flashback end. And the next thing I know, I have a bingo book entry, Naruto finished with a clap of his hands. Hiruzen had his eyes narrowed in thought. I see, the scars from the wounds that your father gave I will run deep. Naruto spread his hands in the universal gesture of, how does this even work? Why would they be holding out on a grudge for a dead man? Isn't it just easier to move on? Hiruzen rubbed his forehead. You must know that Iowa lost a lot in the Third War, Naruto. Majority of it because of your father. Never had a hidden village suffered a loss of this magnitude in history. And wiping out 1,000 shinobi drastically weakened their military strength, which takes years to rebuild. Even now, I suspect that they still may not have replenished those numbers. It's hard to forget such things, Naruto. Naruto pursed his lips and looked down. What would he do if someone did that to him? Would he keep on hating, or would he let go? I don't know what I would do. Hiruzen gained an understanding glint in his eye. It's hard to put yourself in the shoes of the enemy to understand them, Naruto. Naruto tilted his head sideways, arching an eyebrow. Well, this sounds like something I wouldn't want to think about. They sat in silence for a few moments, each lost in their thoughts. It was Danzo who offered the replacement, wasn't it? Hiruzen looked up in surprise. How did you know? Tsunade didn't look so happy when she thought she already had a replacement, Naruto answered. Hiruzen sighed and rubbed his forehead. Yes. But every shinobi must only obey the Hokage. If some are working for him, doesn't that make him look suspicious? You could launch an investigation into him. My old friend is far too careful for that, Hiruzen revealed with a tiredness he felt every time he talked with her about Danzo. Root still exists, I'm sure of it. But we have no evidence. Naruto remained silent, not revealing about his plan to take out the Root member as soon as he met him or her. He wanted Gigi to have deniability on this. Hiruzen looked at Naruto with utmost seriousness, causing the blonde to straighten in his seat. I advise you to be careful, Naruto. Danzo wants to keep an eye on you, for what reason I can only speculate. Don't give away too much information. Naruto nodded back. He wouldn't expect anything else from the bandaged mummy. Well, if it isn't Raijin no Te. Naruto turned his head around to see a bearded man enter the room, hands in pockets and like majority of the Sarutobi, a cigarette in the mouth. He waved at him with a grin. Yo Naruto. Naruto smiled, getting up to greet the man. With some smugness he noticed that he was only a little shorter in height than the bear-like Jonin. Shaking hands, he remarked, as smoky as ever, Asuma-san. Asuma snorted. Hard to leave such a habit is more like it. Naruto agreed in that aspect. Just then, his nose picked up a strange scent coming from the man. A very feminine scent. He smirked and gave him a knowing look. Well, I hope you and your team are doing well. Congratulations on your relationship. Asuma spluttered. What relationship? Naruto turned back to Hiruzen, who also had a smirk on his face. Don't worry. We can keep a secret. Asuma attempted to brush past the embarrassment. Well, I actually wanted to talk to you about something. Naruto raised an eyebrow, the smirk still on his face. Oh. Do tell. Asuma removed the cigarette from his mouth. I have trained my team pretty hard in the past 3 years. While they have gotten better, I want to put them to a test against an S-rank shinobi. We are clashing with Akatsuki now, and sooner or later they will be facing one of the mercenaries. I want to see, and for them to see, how they fare against an S-rank heavyweight. Naruto grinned, but there was a malicious delight in his grin. This is sounding more interesting by the second. I'm in. Asuma was a bit worried upon seeing the delightful grin on Naruto's face, but pushed his worry aside. Maybe he was just happy to be seeing his friends again, see how strong they had gotten. Or maybe, a small part of his mind whispered, you just signed your student's death warrants. Asuma pushed the voice away, masking how worried he was about the fight. He then asked the blonde, so when do we do this? Naruto folded his hands. I'm actually preparing for a mission right now, that's supposed to be quite a risky one. So let's do this after I return. Asuma nodded, pleased that he'd gotten what he wanted. Fine by me. Naruto then turned back to Gigi. It was nice talking to you, Gigi. Let's talk some more later. Maybe get a bowl of ramen. Hiruzen smiled. Sure. Good luck on your mission. Naruto then left the office, leaving father and son alone. There was silence for a few minutes, after which Asuma spoke. My students don't stand a chance, do they? Hiruzen just smirked. Do you believe in them? Asuma whirled around. Of course I do. There's your answer. Asuma let it go at that. His father had the annoying habit of speaking in riddles. He wasn't going to get anything else out of him. So you are proctoring the Chunin exams. Shikamaru shrugged, looking annoyed with the task assigned to him. Troublesome but, I can't complain. I can't do what I want. Naruto dryly pointed out. If you were allowed to do whatever you wanted, we would never see you again. Shikamaru looked disgruntled. Maybe I wouldn't be disturbed from my sleep every now and then. Come now, Shikamaru, it would be so boring without you. Naruto turned to see the owner of the hearty and cheerful voice. Choji had grown, both his hair and body. He wore clothing similar to his father, with the Akamichi symbol. However, the difference from 3 years ago and now was that Choji had much more muscle at his disposal under the layer of fat. Naruto grinned as they exchanged a hug. I'm sure you can manage somehow. Ah Naruto, have you grown thinner than before? Choji frowned at his friend. My appetite is as healthy as ever, Choji, Naruto returned with an easy smile. Maybe you should eat more. You are all skin and bones, Choji chastised, pulling out a bag of chips. Naruto snorted. Compared to you I am. So what are you doing here then? I was just talking to Shikamaru about. His danger sense buzzed loudly, making his head snap to the side. Shikamaru and Choji were right behind him, noticing the attack at the same time. But Naruto was already moving. Air appeared around his hand like a blade of wind, slashing away at the strange black and white creature. As soon as he slashed it, it burst into a black liquid that was, ink. Naruto wasted no more time, disappearing in a flash step and appearing right behind his attacker, kunai to the throat. Shikamaru and Choji gaped at the speed which Naruto moved towards the attacker, who wore a Konoha headband. Naruto observed his attacker closely, learning whatever he could. Pale skin, suggestive of spending extended period of time away from sunlight. Barest smell of sewer air, which means he remains underground, close to the sewers. Unusual choice of clothing, unique equipment. Prefers long-range combat, hidden from the eyes, but Tonto suggests that he isn't unversed in close combat either. Approximate age, 15 to 17 years old, low Jonin level chakra reserves. Chakra is refined, which is indicative of a high level of control. You're good, he complimented, eyes narrowed. He was still highly suspicious that this guy hadn't moved one bit even after being seen. The guy turned his head and looked at him with calculative eyes, before gracing him with the fakest smile Naruto had ever seen. I knew you were fast, but I didn't think you were this fast, Uzumaki Naruto. Regards me as a stranger, or as simply unaware of my head of clan status. Fakest smile I've ever seen, eyes completely blank of emotion. Yep, this guy is root. Now is my chance. How did you? I don't know how you got in the village, but you're done. With that, Naruto slashed at the throat. The guy had tried to move away, but Naruto had already frozen him with Kanashibari. Blood flowed from his jugular vein like waterfall, and his eyes showed complete shock. Naruto watched dispassionately as the life faded from his eyes. Shikamaru and Choji joined him on the roof, eyes wide with surprise and horror. Naruto, what have you done? Naruto glanced at Shikamaru, replying as if speaking about the weather. He was a spy. I killed him. And, yeah, I just killed off Sai. He really didn't fit in my story, and I really didn't think I would have been able to do justice to the guy. This was Naruto's first move against Danzo. I guess you will have to wait to find out what happens to Naruto in the next chapter. So long. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.